starting us off with number 10 is The Incest Diary. I told you guys it can appear in any video, always be prepared for it. Published in 1999, the book goes into excruciating detail about a girl's incestuous relationship with her dad. The abuse began when she was 14 and lasted till her late 20s. Wow. The woman even tried going to the police to file charges against her dad, but the officer said it had been too long and that she should just write her story down. Justice, the police, it's nothing, he said. And so she did. She wrote a book. The book goes from flashbacks to her childhood to adulthood. It has her inner monologues that contradict themselves constantly. Her manic fixations are clear in the book, and she goes into detail about how it informed every single thing she ever did, how she sought the abuse and reenacted it in other relationships, how if anything she started craving the abuse. The book sold more than 70,000 copies in France in the first 3 months after its release. I mean, it's dark, it's graphic, and it's anonymous. Coming in at number 9 is A Woman in Berlin. This one came out in English in 1954 and it's said to be memoirs of an anonymous German woman. It covers April to June 1945 when the Red Army occupied Berlin. The woman is a journalist and she goes on to describe really dark subject matter like getting gang raped by Russian soldiers and trying to survive in the situation by dating a Soviet officer and how other girls had to make similar decisions. Women literally had no protection from anyone at that time, so it really was eat or be eaten. When it was first published in Germany, it was met with a lot of disgust since it was just too soon to talk about the German suffering, but 2 years after Hitler died, the book was republished and was on the bestsellers list for more than 20 weeks. The author was actually revealed in 2003 posthumously by Jens Bisky, a literary editor. She identified the author to be Marta Hillers, and Marta's publisher was absolutely livid at the invasion of privacy that had caused. I don't get why people can't just let other people remain anonymous. Like, can everyone just live their lives and stop interfering in other people's lives? That'd be great. At number 8 we have Go Ask Alice. Now this book was published anonymously in 1971 and it revolves around the diary of a girl who gets addicted to drugs at 15 and then runs away from home. It's funny, when I saw this book in a bookshop a few years ago I really wanted to read it, but I had way too many unread books at the time on my shelf, so I didn't get it, but it's ironic, it's popped up into my life once again. But anyway, the book follows this girl as she goes through heartbreak, intense drug use, rape, body image, social acceptance, etc. It's sort of a coming of age story if anything, but laser focused on drugs. She basically moves city due to her dad's job and goes home one summer to stay with her grandparents. She attends a party, she tries a drink laced with LSD unknowingly, and so begins the journey of drugs. If you're interested in the title of the book, it's actually referencing a song called White Rabbit, which is alluding to Alice in Wonderland. Alice eats and drinks a bunch of things that change her size, so they're kind of linking that to a drug experience, but there is a twist and it's not the book's ending. Controversy sparked in the 70s because of Beatrice Sparks and people thinking she was the author of the book. She was initially credited as the editor, but then records showed she was the sole author, and then apparently it was the diary of a deceased teenager. I mean, it's really all over the place, but the book does look amazing but also scarily real. Filling our number 7 slot is Diary of an Oxygen Thief, and I've heard of this one too, and the title alone is just hilarious. Aren't we all just low-key oxygen thieves? Rudy. Either way, published in 2006, the book is a Dutch novel also written in the style of a memoir. That's 4 books in a row now that have been memoirs and anonymous. Honestly, people want to reveal their dirty secrets but not want to reveal themselves. It is what it is, guys. Either way, the book is about an Irish man who is an alcoholic and who takes pleasure in emotionally abusing women. What a catch. The man regrets his past relationships as the book goes on, and as he changes jobs, he moves to the US where culture shock happens, addiction and paranoia happens, love happens, everything just goes down, and the book isn't even that long. Self-deprecating humor is the book's forte. I mean, oxygen thief. The narrator doesn't even think he's worth the air he breathes, so I mean, is he or isn't he? Guess we'll have to read it to find out. Now at number 6 is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and the plot of this low-key sounds really really good, like it could be the next historical film starring Saoirse Ronan for sure. Published sometime in the 14th century, the novel, if you couldn't tell from the Arthurian title, is a Middle English chivalric romance. The plot is actually lit, you guys. It follows Sir Gawain, one of King Arthur's knights, who basically agrees to a challenge from a mysterious Green Knight. The challenge is for any knight to cut the Green Knight with his axe, and he then gets to axe the knight back 1 year and 1 day later. Sir Gawain beheads the dude and he picks up his head and then reminds him he'll be back on the scheduled date. And so starts the story of Gawain trying to stay loyal and chivalrous and courageous about the agreement and the trials and tribulations along with that. Basically, hero goes on quest and gets tested. End plot. That's like Dungeons and Dragons right there. The book itself is written in stanzas and each one ends in a rhyme, so I know it may be a bit hard to read, but for those who are willing, do you. Coming in at number 5 is Might is Right. And this one is definitely gonna anger all our feminists out there, so here's to hoping this seems problematic to everyone watching, hopefully, fingers crossed. Published in 1890, this non-fiction book is a lot to take in. It focuses mostly on social Darwinism, which applies natural selection and the whole survival of the fittest science to human society and politics. He emphasizes how humans are motivated by our own selfish wants, and we base our decisions on the consequences of them rather than if they're morally right or not. He claims only physical strength can lead to moral right and actively bashes democracy and Christianity. He says BS like weakness should be viewed with hatred and that women and families are the property of men since they are more superior. It was even dubbed as proto-fascist white power manifesto, which I'm inclined to agree with. The author went by the pseudonym Ragnar Redbeard, so that's clearly not a real name, but interestingly enough, a white supremacist publisher and the Church of Satan founder both think Jack London wrote the book, and if he didn't, that's a really brutal accusation by some pretty questionable people. At number 4 is the autobiography of an ex-colored man. What a title. The title itself literally had me. I was like, ex-colored man, what does that even mean? Order on Amazon right now. But anyway, published in 1912, the book is a fictional account of a biracial man whose name we never find out since he's always just called the ex-colored man. The story follows his life living in America at the end of the 19th century when things like lynchings were very much still happening. His dream is to glorify black people through ragtime music, but after seeing the way society worked, he started passing as white to make his life easier and safer. He forms a friendship with a character called the rich white gentleman, and despite being a free man, there were aspects of slave-master dynamics within this relationship. It was originally published anonymously since the author was a diplomat and wasn't sure how controversial the book could be since issues of race and discrimination weren't really discussed in books back then. When it was republished 15 years later and it did moderately well, the author decided to be credited, and so the book's anonymity died in 1927. James Weldon Johnson is the man of the hour, and if you don't know what that means, that just means he's the author. Filling our number 3 slot is Lazarillo de Tormes. Now this one is actually a Spanish novella that was first published in 1554, probably the oldest book on this list, no doubt. The author chose to remain anonymous because of all the anti-clerical content, and the author was living in Spain. I'm sure he had beef with religious authority interfering in political matters and wanted to publicize it but also not get hung for it, so fair enough. The book followed an impoverished boy called Lazaro who goes from master to master. He gets more cunning and smart as he changes masters while simultaneously trying to take over his father's practice. The reason this book is so high up on the list is because it's sort of iconic in many ways. It was credited with inventing the picaresque genre, which basically means the adventures of a slightly rogue hero of lower class who uses his wits to survive in a corrupt society. Unsurprisingly enough, the book got banned by the Spanish crown for dissing the Catholic Church and all aristocracy, and only got unbanned in the 19th century. Now at number 2 is Frankenstein. I know, Mary Shelley, we know she wrote it, don't come for me. She started writing it at 18 and published it at 20. Can you imagine publishing one of the most renowned pieces of gothic fiction at the age of 20? What were we doing at 20? Freaking twiddling our thumbs and playing Temple Run on our iPads probably. Oh, that's what I was doing at 20. Actually, no it wasn't. Cut that out, editor. When it was originally published in 1818, it was done so anonymously for many reasons probably. I mean, she was 20 for one, who's gonna take a 20-year-old seriously? Her dad was a very famous author, so maybe it was also the pressure of living up to that she didn't want, or maybe if it didn't do well, she just didn't want anything to do with it. Many actually thought her husband Percy wrote it since he's the one who wrote the introduction for it. When its second edition was published in 1823, that's actually when she appeared as the author. The novel was met with great success, which let the family move to Italy and get lit really. Actually, no, it wasn't lit, her life was very tragic, but yeah, here's to Mary Shelley. And finally, at number 1 is novel with cocaine or cocaine romance. This one weirdly caught my attention because it's so vague. I was trying to gather as much info about it as I could, but it was actually quite hard. Published in 1934, it's a Russian psychological novel which explores ideology, and I mean it was Russian, communism ideology was important at the time. It explores philosophy and psychology all through the veil of a teen's cocaine addiction. We follow Vadim through school, his experiences with women, what his life is like, what he thinks of everything pre-cocaine, and then obviously after. When it was published, the author was M. Agiev, and that's meant to be the pseudonym for Russian author Mark Levi, but this has never been confirmed, and so it still remains anonymous to this day.
At number 10, we have It. Yeah, we all know what this is about, and you've seen the movies. But if you weren't spooked by the movies, then you should definitely read the book because it's way scarier. One of my buddies told me a story about how his dad was reading the book and getting so scared while he was reading the book that his mom made him stop reading it because he kept waking her up from night terrors. There are some points in the book that are so much more horrible. Like the bully in the book, Henry Bowers, is way worse in the book than he is in the movies. He is almost as evil as Pennywise himself. At one point he pins down Ben Hanscom and he carves his name into his stomach like he's carving a turkey. He also whitewashes the kid's face in snow until he starts bleeding everywhere, and he also hunts down a dog and kills it. This is all before he gets sent to jail and then escapes from jail and is even more dangerous than before. That alone is enough to make the book much more terrifying, and there's also a weird group sex scene who everyone who reads the book talks about because it's super strange. At number 9 we have the Necronomicon. This isn't just a book, but it's also a weapon. Whoa, super crazy dude. It's a bunch of texts that have the power to summon demonic forces. It is the backbone of the horror series Evil Dead. The book summons a force that has the ability to kill and infect people with some sort of plague that turns them into slaves of the book while simultaneously rotting their bodies and making them look like bloodthirsty zombies. You can also use this book to summon demons to do your bidding, possess people, and communicate with the dead, and a whole bunch of other demonic things. Also, you read this book at your own risk. All the text is in an unknown language, and if you say the wrong thing, it might bring the end of the world. At number 8 we have the Journal of Tom Riddle. If you're a Harry Potter fan, then you know this book very well. This journal is one of the Horcruxes that is connected to Lord Voldemort. If you write in the book will write back to you, slowly corrupting you, getting into your mind and controlling you. In Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, it corrupts the mind of Ginny Weasley and gets her to open the Chamber of Secrets, which wakes up the basilisk and leaves her for dead inside the chamber. I can't think of a way a book could scar you more than taking over your mind and turning you into a mindless slave. You need to get a lot of therapy to get over that one, yeah. At number 7 we have Pet Sematary. It should be no surprise that there is more than one Stephen King book on this list. He's one of the greatest horror writers that has ever walked the earth. We gotta give him a lot of love. Pet Sematary is one of the great horror classics. You have a cat that dies and then gets buried in a supernatural cemetery. The cat comes back to life. Holy crap, that is amazing. But then the protagonist's daughter dies. They have a funeral for the poor girl, but he can't live with it. He refuses to have his daughter taken away from him. So he goes to the graveyard, digs up his daughter, and then buries her in the supernatural cemetery where it will bring her back to life. And it does. But now the sacred bond between life and death has been broken. I don't want to give away what happens next because it's a great book and you should definitely give it a read. At number 6 we have The Terror, the Dan Simmons novel that proves no matter how bad things get, they can always get worse. The book is a fictional telling of a real-life expedition. It was the expedition to find the Northwest Passage back in 1845. 2 massive ships set sail with a crew of 120 people. It was the HMS Ibris and the HMS Terror. In reality, the 2 ships set out on their expedition and were never seen again. To this day it is unknown exactly what happened to them, but this book gives an extremely grim idea of what could have gone down. It has everything from being stuck in the frozen tundra of the Arctic in temperatures that would freeze your limbs off, stuck in that temperature for months, to supernatural creatures walking around and stalking them and tormenting them. There's people going insane, poisoning, and even the flashbacks, which are probably the happiest part of the book, are also depressing. If you want a compelling story that will leave you sad in your soul, then you have to pick this one up. It's a very good book. You should read it. At number 5, we have the Untitled Grimoires. This is one of the most mysterious books that has ever worked its way into the public eye. They were written by an unknown witch and scripted in a language that apparently only those who practice witchcraft can read. In fact, it said that you shouldn't even read it if you aren't someone who practices the dark arts, or it will bring death to you and everyone around you. Sounds pretty intense. Rumor says that the scriptures have been worked on through generations, with each time getting passed down they become more powerful. I don't know if I believe the whole hoopla, but someone out there clearly does, because when they were posted online for sale, they sold for over $13,000. I mean, that would be a lot of money to make off of some hoopla, that's for sure. At number 4, we have Silence of the Lambs. Hello, Clarice. You know that thing he does? A book about a super smart serial killer psychologist who is able to break out of prison, manipulate people, and also has a palate that loves the taste of human flesh. Wow, one extremely horrible serial killer packed into a book. Well, let's amp it up even more by throwing in another serial killer that likes to find women, put them in a hole in the ground for weeks at a time, make them put lotion on their skin to soften it up, and then kills them, skins them, and turns their moisturized skin into a nice suit. I think it's a dress, actually, I'm not too sure. Yeah, after reading this book, you'll be walking through your home, making sure all the doors and windows are locked, and checking the news to see if anyone has gone missing in the last few weeks. At number 3, we have Misery. This is a book that will make anyone second guess getting famous. The book follows an author who gets into a brutal car accident and then wakes up in a woman's home. She is a huge fan and is nursing him back to health. Well, that's what it seems like until he learns that she is keeping him their prisoner. He tries to escape, he tries to drug her, but continuously fails, and then when she realizes that he's trying to leave her, she cuts off his feet so he can't leave. Then he has to beat her to death with a typewriter so he can make it out a footless man. All because she was absolutely obsessed with him. Talk about abandonment issues. At number 2, we have the Codex Gigas. This book is said to be written by the devil himself. Now, even though this one sounds like it was pulled out of a movie, this is a real life scripture. The legend behind this book is more folklore than fact, but the most popular tale is that of a monk who was sentenced to death by the monastery. He didn't want to die, so he decided to make a deal. The monk promised the monastery that he would script the entire history of the monastery in one night. Halfway through the night, he saw that the task was actually impossible, so he prayed for help. But he didn't reach out to his loving God to come down and give him the answer. No, he went down below and he asked the Dark Lord to help him finish the book. The devil appeared before him and wrote the text. The scripture was written in a language that has never been decoded, and it is related to no known language. It also has pages that have full illustrations of what seems to be the devil. It's also said that the text is cursed, and anyone who tries to decode the text will die. And I can't really think of something more traumatizing than death. At number 1, we have House of Leaves. I really wanted to put a real book that you can go out and get at the number 1 spot. This has been called one of the scariest books of all time. That is a crazy statement, and it really makes me want to read this book. That's right, I haven't read this book, but it was mentioned so many times online that I thought it would be stupid not to put it at the top of the list. And also I've heard tons of people rave about it. The book centers around a documentary crew following a family who lives in a rather strange home. The home is larger on the inside than it would seem ever possible from looking at the outside, in a way that defies the laws of physics. From there, the story twists and turns to keep you on your toes and completely unaware of what's happening next. But that isn't the part of the book that really sets it apart from the best horror novels ever written. It's the layout of the book that makes the book so unsettling. There are constant footnotes that reference fictional books and movies. There are pages that have mirrored words that force you to flip your book to read them. The narrators will shift in between different people and communicate with each other. There are pages that have just a few words written on them. This all combines in a way to make the reader second guess their own thoughts as if they were actually going insane. This unique approach to storytelling has given the book the reputation of genre defining. It is great. Go out and read it. I'm gonna read it after this for sure.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Devil's Bible. The Devil's Bible, otherwise known as the Codex Gigas, is a massive book said to harbor an immense amount of negative energy. I mean, duh, it's called the Devil's Bible for a reason. So basically, legend goes that this 157-pound book was written by a monk. But this monk broke his spiritual vows, and so he was sentenced to be sealed behind a brick wall and left to die. But the night before his death, he realized he wouldn't be able to finish this book. So he summoned Lucifer and asked him to complete the book for him. In return, he offered him his soul. So legend goes that the book was finished by the devil himself. What's creepier is that some of the pages are filled with drawings of the devil and other demonic entities. On one page, there's a 19-inch drawing of Satan. The book also contains a bunch of dark rituals and texts. If the book got in the wrong hands, who knows what damage they could do.
Coming in at number 9, we have the Voynich manuscript, a book that has baffled all of the best minds in the world. It was discovered by antiquarian book dealer Wilfred M. Voynich near Rome in an old chest in 1912. It immediately caught his attention due to its lackluster appearance, which was unlike all the other pretty ones in the compartment. But what he found inside became a mystery that keeps getting stranger. Apparently the codex was purchased by Roman Emperor Rudolph II, who believed it was written by Roger Bacon. But Bacon lived in the 12th century and the paper carbon dated to the 15th century, so already Inside the book has remained incomprehensible to even the most impressive cryptographers and linguists. They've identified at least 25 to 30 characters, and though the writing and illustrations don't make sense, it doesn't appear to be gibberish. Alan Turing all the way to artificial intelligence have all taken turns, but to no avail. From images of planets long extinct and intricate astrological signs, no one knows what the hell it means, but many speculate that it could have been written, get ready for this, by aliens. Of course, when we don't know the answer, aliens! It's the only logical solution. But if it does belong to aliens, what if they want it back?
And at number 8 we have Untitled Grimoires. Grimoires are witches' spell books, but it's said that they need to be burned after the witch's death. However, this one was not burned. Instead, it was kept, and in 2013 it sold on a website. It was sold for $13,865. That's a lot of money for a book. But here's the thing, the book came with a warning. It said, and I quote, "To those not of the craft, the reading of this book is forbidden. Proceed no further, or justice will exact a swift and terrible retribution, and you will surely suffer at the hand of the craft." So basically, the book is cursed if it falls into the wrong hands. This book is also said to contain a number of curses, enchantments, and spells. Also, it tells you how to perform an exorcism, you know, just in case you summon a demon and then everything goes wrong. I mean, any book that tells you how to summon ghosts and demons should just be burned. I'm sorry.
Coming in at number 7, we have Tomino's Hell, and here is yet another book that you should never read, because if you do, your lives and the lives of those you love could be in jeopardy. Tomino's Hell was written by Yomoto Uniko in a book that's titled The Heart is Like a Rolling Stone. Legends of how this curse started vary, but results such as vomiting glass and loved ones dying tragic deaths continue to be associated with the poem. One radio show host tried to read it aloud on air, and halfway through started to feel ill and disturbed and wasn't able to finish it. He continued to feel ill, and a few days later he got into an accident that resulted in him having to get 7 stitches. To this day, he tries not to even think about the poem and warns other people against it. But I thought I'd surprise everyone today and read the poem out loud, so we'll see. But let's see if this myth is true, shall we? Here's the poem. Just kidding! I'm not gonna read it out loud, and nor should you.
In our 6th spot we have the Book of Soiga. Sounds weird, I don't know if I pronounced it wrong, but we're gonna roll with that. This book has quite the history behind it. So it was created in the 16th century and is a Latin essay all about demonology. Apparently, there are only 2 copies in existence. One was owned by a man named John Dee and his brother. They both were determined to translate the entire book. Upon translating it, they figured it was a book filled with dark rituals and incantations. But the last 36 pages were untranslatable. He became so obsessed with trying to figure out what the last pages read that it drove him to madness. After his death, the books were lost for the longest time until 1994. That's when 2 copies were found. Now legend goes that those that successfully decipher the final pages of the book will die within 3 years. So it's up to you. Will you tempt fate and decipher the pages? Or should we burn the book so that no one else dies? I'll go with the latter.
The Orphan Story coming in at number 5. This book started out innocent until it started racking up victims. The Orphan Story is an adventure book about a Spanish teen who ventures to Lima to party like there's no tomorrow, and then there's other adventures and romantic stories and yada yada yada. It was written by an Augustinian friar named Martin de Leon between 1605 to 1615, who'd also been to Lima, but he never wanted to get it published for fear that it would taint his chances in becoming archbishop, but that didn't stop people from trying, and maybe it should've. When it was rediscovered in the Hispanic history archives, many were discouraged from working on it as it was believed to be cursed. Dun dun dun! Those who had tried to publish it before had all died, one from a random car accident and the other from an entirely mysterious disease. No one touched it for years until one brave man took on the task once more. It was actually published for the first time in 2018, and the publisher believes that the curse has finally been lifted. Not that there wasn't a curse in the first place, but like maybe things will get worse now, who knows? Maybe the curse is waiting for, I don't know, 3 years.
In our 4th spot, we have the Book of Sacred Magic. This 15th century book was written by a man named Abra Malin, who was a mage, aka that's just a fancy word for a magician. Well, he wrote this book for his son, and apparently it's cursed, because why not give your son a cursed book? I mean, it probably wasn't cursed when he got it, but that's besides the point. Anyways, in the 1900s, the book was translated into English, and soon after, people deemed it a curse. Throughout the book, it talked about rituals on how to control your demons. Abra believed that every person had their own demon, not like a metaphorical one, but like a literal one. It also talked about how to perform other supernatural acts. In the end, it was believed that whoever owns a copy will be haunted by the spirits, and bad luck will befall on them. Again, possessions and haunting and bad luck, it's a no from me.
Coming in at number 3 with the Necromonicon. Again, I'm gonna bring this up, but you know that scene from The Mummy when Evie is like, what harm has ever come from reading a book? And then proceeded to unleash hell by reading the Book of the Dead? Well, lesson learned, right? No, because the Necromonicon, also called the Book of the Dead, is an ancient grimoire, and as we know, we should burn grimoires, but we don't. And it's bound in human skin and has inspired many horror films like Evil Dead. This book is so powerful, some even say one word from its pages and horrors beyond your wildest nightmares will emerge. This book was featured as a fictional object in H.P. Lovecraft's stories, and he even allowed authors to cite it as a source so it could become more real. Lovecraft insisted it was made up, but many tried and true fans of the occult think otherwise. They think that the book in fact exists, but it's hidden so it will never cause any harm. HP says the idea for the book came to him in a dream, but many say that the spirit of the book chose Lovecraft to reveal it, meaning there are people hunting for the real thing. My advice? Don't. Leave it alone. Again, we don't need it. Demons can stay where they are, okay?
In our 2nd spot, we have The Great Omar. This is another book that has quite the dark past. So basically, in 1909, a man named Sangorsky decided to create a much fancier version of the book, The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. I'm gonna apologize right now, I know I totally butchered that name. Now, he bejeweled it and made the cover look absolutely beautiful. It took him 2,500 hours to create. In the end, it had 1,500 precious/semi-precious stones, 4,967 leather inlays, and 600 sheets of 22-karat gold leaf. It's honestly a very beautiful book. But the thing is, no one wanted to buy this super expensive book when they could literally just get one for much cheaper. But eventually it was put up for auction, but it only sold for £450. Now, the book was shipped, but it never got to the buyer. Why? Well, the ship it was being transported on was the Titanic, and the book went down with the ship. Then only a few weeks later, the creator of this book mysteriously drowned. Ain't that a freaky coincidence? But that's not all. A second version was created called The Great Omar II. It was then placed in a bank vault, but the bank was hit by a bomb during the London Blitz of World War II, and this copy was destroyed as well. Then a third copy was created because they didn't learn their lesson, and it was donated to the British Library, where apparently it's still to this day. But due to its dark past, many believe that this book is cursed, and that bad things will happen to whoever owns it.
Coming in at number 1, you know what sucks is that there's a PDF version of this book that Lindsay and I found, and we were both like, no! know, like we opened it by accident. We're like, no, I don't want to read this. I don't want to read this. I don't want to read this. It's really creepy. So this one is The Lesser King of Solomon. The Lesser King of Solomon, or the Goetia, is one of the most famous grimoires and contains a summoning spell for over 72 demons. And no one knows who wrote it. Written entirely in Latin, the book dates back to the 14th and 15th century, though any remaining manuscripts date to the 16th and 18th. Legend has it that King Solomon originally had it written for his son and asked him to bury it with him in his grave when he died. But supposedly, a group of Babylonian philosophers discovered it while repairing his tomb, and one of them was said to have had a vision sent to him by an angel that told him to hide the book from the unworthy. He did so by casting a spell on it, which clearly didn't work. The first few chapters contained instructions on how to summon and trap demons in this world, which, by the way, why? I doubt they're as sexy as Lil Nas, okay? But if you're looking for love, the book also contains instructions on how to find it and also how to become invisible. Obviously now, copies of this book can be found on the internet, but please, for the love of all this stuff, like, just don't. Just burn it, you know? Have someone burn it from the internet. It's just too much out there. We don't want to know what's on the other side just yet, anyways.
Now, let's be serious here for a minute. This message is for all those tweens who decided it was a good idea in middle school to say Bloody Mary in the school washroom or at sleepovers. I did that.
Yeah, I know the girls who did. And this is for the message for all the people who want to light the black flame candle and all the Eevees who think no harm has ever come from a book.
Stop it.
Right now.
We know what you're thinking. You want to read these books really bad. But for the love of all that is rainbow and sunshine, don't even try.
We can't handle any more ridiculousness this year, so this is your last and final warning. Do not go near these books.